Hello, people. Welcome to our show tonight, and we're going to have an interesting show. I'm here with James Proctor, the Lee Cole James Proctor podcast. He's part of James is a partner of this podcast now, so I will not say end. It's basically together.
Yep.
Okay,
Hey Lee, how are you doing tonight?
good. And we're going to be. Uh, oh, by the way, Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Yes, happy
Even if we
Mother's
put this
Day.
up Monday, we're making this on Mother's Day. Uh,
Yes.
so we're going to talk about something Mikey Scars wrote today. He wrote two things. And first, I want to read the first thing that he wrote. Uh, and if anybody wants to see this, they can go to Mikey Scars' channel and see this. He put it up in his community page.
Yes.
But Mikey Scars wrote this. And this was directed at Sammy Gravano. It's quite obvious. He wrote, only a liar has to remember what he said in the past. An honest person can ask the same question at any point in his life, and his answers are always the same. Over 20 years ago, I was saying the exact same thing I am saying now about what is happening in the Gambino family. I'm not jealous of anyone. I'm not doing anything for views, subscribers, or money. I'm telling you guys the truth about what was going on. I was there. Like I said, I'm only here to leave an accurate historical record. Much of what you guys have been told is not true. That's a pretty powerful statement, ain't it?
Yeah, and so what's happening is you'll notice that whenever in Sammy's lives, he's always saying that he won't address now Mikey Scars by name. So what he'll say is, "Oh, these are people. They're just looking for views. They're just he'll call them names and basically saying they're looking for views, subscribers, and money." Uh, and he says he's not going to react to it, but he does it every time. And so it's really affecting Sammy, most definitely what Mikey Scars is saying. And so, but Mikey, basically what he's trying to say is that uh, both of these guys have a record of what they talked about or what they've given their story, both of them over 20 years ago. You had Sammy Gravano talking about it in Underboss, and also in his 302s. And then you had Mikey Leonardo saying it as well in 2005 in the trial with John Jr. in his 302s as well. And so the point is that now we're at 2023. You've got Sammy Gravano that is saying something different today that he said back in '89, and then you've got Mikey Scars that's saying the same thing that he said back in 2005.
And I'm gonna and this is from his testimony, and this is also up on the page if you want to go over and check it out.
Yeah.
And I believe they're going to do a show on it too. So we're giving you the basic rundown and throwing in what our opinion is.
Right.
Okay, and it says, and this is a question to him during the testimony. In what sense was Sammy Gravano, by opening up his companies, making more than anyone else? And this is the answer that was received from Mikey. He controlled everyone in every industry in the Borgata that we controlled and letting everybody come to him. So basically, he is describing a man that, based on the death, and let's talk about these deaths real quick. We did shows on these, but
Yeah.
Robert Di Bernardo.
Yeah.
So he gets killed,
Hmm.
and right away, Rogério's involved. He owes him money. Sammy's involved because and at the time, John Gotti is in jail.
Right.
And Rogério went to, this is what Sammy says. Rogério went to him and said that John wants him dead. Okay.
Right.
And this guy always got along with
Yes.
John.
Yeah. Right. And they tried to say, oh, that he was bad mouthing John Gotti, which he never did. I mean, this guy was actually one of the loyal ones that loyal to John Gotti because he was with John as part of the team to take out Paul, not the team that the hit people, but he was in support of John
Yes, and
Gotti.
he knew about everything that was going to happen. He was one of the few
Exactly.
guys that knew. And
Hmm.
and Gravano, when this guy was killed, Gravano sent him to his death, sets him up, brings him in for a meeting. He shot behind in the head by one of the people with Gravano.
Yeah.
And Gravano, once he dies, Gravano took control of Teamster Local 282.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
Rosario didn't have to pay back the $150,000 that he owed him.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and he had he had other rackets too. And so this guy was one of the most what I would say as far as the um as far as he was interesting because he didn't even have any crew that reported up to him, and he was a capo, but the thing was about him is he was one of the wealthiest of the Gambinos.
And his body just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Exactly.
And his wife and daughters, the family came looking for him.
Hmm.
Sammy knew he was dead, but they knew that they disposed of the body, and the man was never seen again.
Yes.
Okay, and we're going to get into another person too. Then you got more businesses, Louis DeBono's businesses.
Hmm.
So Sammy says that he tried to stop this. Do you believe that Sammy tried to stop this guy from being killed?
No, not at all, because he's had history with that guy for a decade, and it doesn't even make sense why they would even go back in business together. No one understood
Yeah,
that.
in the beginning, and then Sammy got pissed at him and decided he wanted him dead and went to John Gotti. Then John Gotti held up on it, and
Yeah,
John,
yeah, he didn't want to do it, and then basically he says on the tapes that the only reason that he would take him out is because he didn't come in when he was told to.
he was told to come into a meeting and he did not come, and it
Right.
cost him his life.
Hmm.
So this guy had a huge drywall business in an industry. Who took it over, James?
Yes, Sammy Gravano.
So right here you can see him profiting from these deaths. I mean, this is
Yeah.
all he did. Then he has his very good friend Louis Mileto.
Hmm.
Molito, I'm sorry. Louis is his best friend. He grew up with him and then he turned him into a drug addict. They were afraid that he was going to rat. And this guy, from all you ever heard about Louis from the guy on the street, is this guy was a gangster. He loved being a gangster.
Yep.
And his best friend got him killed.
Hmm.
And you know why? His
What's
body
that?
disappeared. Never seen
Yeah.
again.
It's kind of weird. One of the things I read, and this involves both Mikey Scars and Sammy, and so it's kind of interesting that Sammy told Mikey, "Oh, what happened was is that Louis ended up cursing him out, and that they had to get rid of him." And they asked, so Sammy asked Mikey Scars, "What do you think about that?" And Mikey realized that was a test, so he knew he needed to carefully answer that. He said, "Well, if it was okay for you, then I'm okay with it." Because he was afraid that if he had, because inside he said, he was saying this was a horrible decision. The guy was valuable. The guy had always been loyal, and to take out your best friend like that, but he knew not to answer that way. And so because he knew he would be the next one to be gone if he answered any differently. So,
That was
Louis,
and that
that
was a
was a
member of Sammy's crew.
yeah, was a member of Sammy's crew and a very, very good friend. And the family really thought highly of Sammy before all this.
And I believe where it was too is Sammy at this point was covering up for the murder of Alan Kaiser. And
Hmm.
Alan Kaiser, 16-year-old kid, walking home, witnesses a murder and gets executed by Sammy and Louis Mileto.
Hmm.
Originally, Sammy told the FBI in the 302 that he did the shooting.
Hmm.
And then he changed it on here to Louis Mileto doing the shooting. And then he changed it. The kid was a drug addict running at him and tried to grab his gun, which, come on,
Hmm.
a 16-year-old kid's going to do that. Okay. Uh, so that's another, but you got to remember, he also took over Louis's businesses.
Yeah.
So this is three guys dead where he takes over the business, and Louis could tie him to the Alan Kaiser murder, amongst other murders. So he cleans that up. Then you got Eddie
Hmm.
Garofalo, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's another one that was,
Close,
the.
part of his crew, and he wound
Hmm.
up getting killed. And a third member of his crew got killed too. And we got a video up of that whole thing, so I don't want to get into all that stuff. But these are people associated with Sammy that are close to him. Sammy is an evil, evil man.
Right. I
Uh,
mean, it's just obvious, and it's just to me, it's all about gaining power is what it seemed like to me.
and which so what happened is you had these three factions in the family at this point. You got
Okay.
John Gotti and his crew around him.
Right.
People don't realize Sammy Gravano had a big crew around
Hmm.
him. And then you got Danny Marino and you got Jimmy Brown. And who wants them to take over the family, James?
Yeah, so that'd be the Genovese and the Lucchese's weren't too. So they knew about what happened to Frankie DeChico. So they, that was all a setup. And so the plan all along was that Jimmy Brown would end up becoming, his name's James. Fiala, but he was going to become the boss, and then Marino would have been an underboss or consigliere, and then I believe one of the Gambino sons was going to be in there as well. And so this was all with the chin because when Big Paul was in there, they had a big business. They got along well, and so these are guys that were very loyal to Carlo Gambino and then to Paul, part of that Sicilian faction. And so they were, they knew that that Chen was upset, but he knew that he could have some control over them if he brought in those folks. But yeah, Jimmy Brown, he was very powerful,
Yeah,
very interesting guy,
and he was an old timer, and he
old timer.
respected on the street. I mean, you're
Yes.
talking that this guy walked next and drove Carlo Gambino, one of the greatest,
Hmm.
one of the most respected gangsters ever.
Hmm.
You know, you can't say
Yeah.
it any different than that. So
No.
the thing that John Gotti had going with him, for him is that explain what he had going with him with this guy Joe Messina.
Yeah, Messino. So, he's a Queens guy, from Mespeth, and so at the time there was the issue with Donnie Brasco and all that, and so the Bonanno family was having a lot of issues, and so they had gotten kicked off the commission, and John Gotti was pushing to get Messino and the Bonannos back into the commission, even though later on we find out that Messino had his own issues with John Gotti, but that was someone that Gotti believes would have supported him in any war.
Yeah, and you're talking, at this point in the '80s, you have all these bodies winding up in trunks, but you're talking about heads of family wanting to kill each other now,
Yes.
and that's why the car
Well, and
was.
it happened right. It happened because of, when we see what happened to Big Paul, that was an unsanctioned hit, and so yeah, by if you go by the letter of the law, we know every rule in the commission, every rule of the mafia ends up getting broken, but the reality is that it is against the rules to have an unsanctioned hit on a boss, and so that was why that's what the Chin said was the issue. Plus, he never really liked John Gotti anyway, so that
And
was
you
part
had
of it.
Gravano. Gravano was like in the middle.
Hmm.
If they took Gotti out, maybe they could have worked something out with him because he was so powerful. But he had a lot of businesses that the Chin would want from him.
Yeah,
I mean, you're
exactly.
talking a lot. I mean, nobody was making more money than Gravano at that time.
Yeah,
And
and it didn't make any sense in his rule. He was a consigliere, and then he became a underboss. That was the whole problem was that the capos and many of the capos and soldiers weren't able to get business. They weren't able to feed their family per se because Sammy Gravano was greedy. He was grabbing all the businesses, and so that's a lot of what
and,
is being
and a
shown
lot of
here.
this is John Gotti's fault because he let it happen. And
Yeah.
he probably should have put somebody else in charge of those businesses. Sammy claimed that he gave $2 million a year to John Gotti. Once again, this is Sammy saying it,
Yeah,
and
but John Guy said he didn't get anything as well at times.
well,
So,
yeah, on the tapes he was saying that there was a lot of money missing, and
hmm.
so if you listen to those tapes the way John Gotti's talking at that time about Sammy Gravano, you could feel something's about to come down in the family.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension, but it also what you could tell too is that John Gotti's very he's torn by it because Sammy did was with John in
And he,
the
and
All
he did,
Castle
and he
hit.
did hold the door for John. But see, you see that smirk on his face right there. He's holding the door. He'll hold the umbrella,
Hmm.
but inside that brain, it's going a mile. It's going a mile a minute, and he has everything he's thinking about. He at that moment, he's making more money than the boss of the family.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because his motivation. I mean, John liked being the boss, but it wasn't so much about the money; it was all about the Cosa Nostra. He liked being the boss, and
John
so
Gotti could take $50,000, drop it at the table. I mean,
yeah,
on
that's true.
gambling. I mean,
Hmm.
uh, where Sammy was more of a laid back type of guy, took every penny he made and stashed it everywhere.
Hmm.
And look at the club that he took over.
Hmm.
Well, where the guy wouldn't pay him, and that
Yeah.
was his club.
The,
But
right.
here's one of the big problems. So Gravano he was considered on the street, the regular street, as a rising force in the construction industry, right?
Right.
And he mingled with executives from major construction firms.
Yeah, and the
He
unions and
mingled
all
with
that.
union officials, and
Hmm.
he was very and a lot of them would meet him. Big people would meet him at tallies. People that were not meeting with John Gotti
Right.
because John Gotti was surveilled. Nobody wanted to meet with him, especially
No.
if you're these big time executives and stuff. But they were meeting with Gravano. So here you had Gravano becoming very powerful behind the scenes. Is that what you
Yeah,
described?
that's really what was happening. He was just, and he was gaining. It was acquisition via murder is what happened. He just continued to get more and more, and again, you have to keep people in a borgata like this. Everyone has to eat. That's part of the issue. Everyone has to eat. I mean, you need people to be motivated to want to earn more, but if you don't have that opportunity because Sammy's unwilling to let anyone get any piece of that business, then that's going to create problems, as we saw in the tapes with the cruise.
And that's why you heard Gotti saying to Bono, DiBernardo, and Polito laid at the feet of the man that basically came back and said, "Look, these men are drug addicts." He basically said three guys in his crew were drug addicts. And
Yeah,
Garofalo, he said that he got uh, um, the other guy, I can't think of his name right now, hooked on drugs, another important
yeah.
member of the family,
Oh yeah, Nicky Cowboy
Labatt.
maybe, or
No,
oh yeah, Labatt. Yeah.
Labatt. So he got Labatt hooked on drugs, he's saying. And so they all died. I mean, that's what it came down to. But that's Sammy saying it. I've heard people say, oh, on the street, they were known as drug addicts. How did people on the street know them as drug addicts? First of all, not many people are alive from that time, that era. And
Well, and that's part of the
and
problem
these
too.
and
Is
these are gangsters that didn't associate with people out in the public. They
yeah,
associate
they
amongst
wouldn't know.
themselves.
Yeah,
And
I mean the honest to God truth though is that there was a problem with drugs all over the mafia. It
yes,
was not just, and that's just an excuse for Sammy to say that. That he knew people that were on drugs, and that had nothing to do with it. It was all about the businesses, or someone upset Sammy with words, and Sammy got greedy, so he's just going to take him out. He's selfish, he's greedy.
so the best thing that ever happened to Sammy Gravano was meeting John Gotti.
Yeah, he was the right place at the right time. He made that decision that he was going to be part of that, of the group that was going to overthrow Big Paw. And with one thing for sure, that John Gotti rewarded every one of them that supported his rise to boss by giving them something they did not have. Joe
And,
Watts, all of them got
and he was
stuff
the
that they didn't
fox.
have.
Sammy was the fox. He was in the hen house.
Hmm.
It's that simple. Sammy usually states, "I was playing chess. Everybody else was playing checkers." He's
Hmm.
absolutely right here. There's no denying that Sammy was outsmarting everybody in that family.
Yeah, I think
Whether
Jimmy
you,
Brown, in a way, was too, working behind the scenes with Chin. It was kind of playing a little bit of chess as well.
yeah, you had men here that were involved with a lot of money
Yeah,
that they were seeing money, and they did not want to lose this money. Then
no,
Sammy had started setting his eyes on Jimmy Brown's money.
Yeah, and that was just crazy to me because, he had nothing to do, so Jimmy Brown, yeah, he had unions. This was all around the waste management business. And
Yes.
so, and Jimmy Brown actually was working with the Lacases on the waste management. And so I don't understand, he's that greedy that he wants to get his business as well. I mean, it's just crazy to me.
If we look
He's
at
had it for 30 years. It was given to him from Carlo Gambino to have the waste management contracts. That's been in the family even before Jimmy Brown.
and when you think about it, though, if you look at Sammy now,
Hmm.
you know, there's Sammy admits he is the same person now that he always was.
Well,
Basically, he'll say it every once in a while, but the
hmm
thing is, he'll say he doesn't regret any part of that life. So basically, he doesn't regret his brother-in-law being murdered. He doesn't regret his best friends being murdered. He
no,
doesn't regret a kid being murdered. That's what he's saying. Uh,
right. And then we hear even in an interview we had yesterday, we hear that he has his people tell him, "Oh, tell us that he's not a rat. He was a government informant or a government witness, and he wants to redefine himself." And I still remember the very first time he got on YouTube, he said, "I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly." And he's not doing that. He's the hero. He's Gary Cooper. He's John Wayne in every one of his stories.
who's John Wayne? Oh, okay, that's what young people say. John Wayne. Oh, you mean like the airport? It's
Yeah,
like okay.
yeah,
Yeah, so people. The main reason we're talking about this is because what Mikey Scars is saying is that Sammy Gravano has changed history, mob history, and
hmm
so he is going to try to give you the truth to replace Sammy's lies.
right. And
And
it's the same story that he said for 20 years. So he's wanting to show that piece of paper, which is from his testimony, to show, hey, this is not something new that I'm saying. This is from what I said in 2005.
and and this is Sammy, 78 years old. This is what he's going to do to the day he dies.
Hmm.
And he's just going to keep on doing it. But we have to remember the line of bodies that lay behind him.
Mm,
Everybody that Sammy was with back in the street is pretty much dead.
exactly.
And here you got a younger guy that was around, Mikey Scars, was around as he just happened to be around because of his lineage, his family. Then he's on the street. He's a money maker. So he
Yep.
was there. He was not nearly as powerful. But see, Mikey Scars admits that Sammy was in the streets and was nobody to mess with and knew how to make money. He said that.
Hmm. Hmm.
But Sammy also had a reputation, even amongst the family, the Gambinos or any other family. He will kill you for your business.
Yeah, exactly. And in the 70s he wasn't as much like that, but then, the early 70s, but then as he
That we
got
know of.
power,
That we
right,
know of.
as we know of,
Because
but then
a man like that, he had the same stripes always.
right, yeah, and that
He-
that's part of it. I mean, he was able to hide it for a while, but it's just but what I was going to say is that he had problems when he's with the Colombos, and then he
yeah.
gets moved over. So I kind of wonder what if he always had that as part of him. But people supposedly liked him early on, but then he just, as he got more and more power, he was treacherous. People were scared that,
And
don't go in business with him.
nobody would really investigate into when he came back to John Gotti and he would say this guy is uh, isn't be, he's basically talking a bunch of crap behind you. He's taking drugs. He's out of
Hmm.
control. These things should have been checked. But
Yeah, I
at
mean,
that time,
John should have checked it, but what happened is that no one could go above Sammy to
he's
John because then
underbossing.
they would have killed him. Yeah, he would have been killed. So I mean, but yeah, John should have been the one to put a rein on Sammy, but he thought he was loyal, and John was being loyal to the people that backed him. You know.
And I like to ask people a question. If you can write underneath here and give your opinion. So you had three factions of the family, pretty much. And then you had the Snake Sam. Well, Sammy was one of those factions, and he was right in the middle.
Yeah.
Who in this? If they're not arrested, and a war breaks out between those three factions, who wins? That's
Yeah,
what I'm right underneath here. Who do you think? Would John Gotti and his crew win? Would Sammy and his crew win? Or would Chin and the two
Jimmy
Gambino
Brown,
guys that
Dane
he worked with?
Marino.
You know, I think it's or would, this is what I see happening. I think that the Gotti faction would have been overwhelmed because you have two factions coming at you at that point.
I think two of them would have had to have kind of aligned, maybe.
I think that Sammy would have aligned. And I think that the family would have been taken over by Jimmy Brown.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about if this arrest never went down. Something bad was going to happen, and you're going to see a lot of bodies show up in trunks, and there were going to be some bosses killed. We were headed. It was heading that way. For anybody else to deny it, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
deny it, but that's the lot. You know.
Well, it'd been worse than the Colombo Third War. You know, if this had happened. But you know what Jimmy Brown, what he had that maybe the others didn't, was the backing of the Genovese family and the Lacases, and that would have been hard. That would have been very hard for any of the, you know, for a Gravano faction or a Gotti faction, even Gotti with the Bonanos. Boy, I don't know.
But then you got Crazy Casso running around on your side, on Jimmy Brown's side. You know, and they already blew up a car.
I mean, he didn't have any problem doing that. Yeah, that's why I think they could have. Jimmy Brown could have easily been the boss if that had happened, in my opinion. But others may have different.
And then that faction wound up getting charged with a murder or stuff. People went to jail there, which always happens. And it even they all wind up going to prison.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, it could have been a lot bloodier. As bloody as the 80s and early 90s were, it could have been a lot worse.
Yes, it could have.
Yes, and that with that, people, I want you to give me your opinions down here. What you think? James, once again, thank you for coming and putting in all your knowledge and the research we do on this.
Thank you.
And people, take care, and I hope you like this video. Let us know underneath. And James,
please like and subscribe if you have.
Subscribe. Is that big enough?
Yes.
subscribe, and read underneath here if you want to donate. Underneath this video, there's going to be a link where you can donate to these videos. Or to the channel. That's totally up to you. But once again, subscribe. Whoops, not that. That's something else. What the hell did I hit there? Oh my God, I hit my my computer protection. I hope no one's seen it. Okay. No. Subscribe. Okay. Okay, people. Take care. Right. Thank you. James, you take care too.
All right, take care.